Let me ask you something. Have you ever been stared at so hard by a neighbor that you started checking your reflection in the window just to make sure you hadn't turned into some sort of outlaw without realizing it? Because that's exactly how it felt the very first morning I tried to water my roses at 121 Cypress Hollow Drive. Now, I don't mean to start off dramatic, but you have to understand I moved to Cypress Hollow for peace. Quiet. I spent over 3 decades working law enforcement in Dallas, and when I finally retired, I didn't want a condo in Florida or a lake house in Tennessee. I wanted a sturdy brick home with a backyard I could turn into a rose sanctuary, a small-town diner within walking distance, and neighbors who minded their business. And at first glance, that's exactly what Cypress Hollow looked like: idyllic, tree-lined, slow-moving. But if you've ever lived under an HOA, you know it only takes one person to change the weather in your entire zip code. That person's name was Brenda McMillan. Now, Brenda wasn't just a neighbor. She was the president of the HOA, head of the neighborhood watch, chair of the beautification committee, and, I suspect, self-appointed warden of the street. The type of woman who wore matching neon tracksuits and took her morning walks like she was patrolling a perimeter. I first saw her peering at me through lace curtains like a judge deciding whether to sentence me or just give me a warning. I gave a little neighborly wave. She didn't wave back. That was day 1. By day 3, she was standing on my porch with a clipboard. "Mr. Evans," she said, voice sweet like syrup on a hot skillet. "I noticed you brought your trash cans out before 6 p.m. That's against the HOA bylaw Article 4, Section C." I blinked. "Ma'am, I just moved in. I didn't even know where the cans go until yesterday." She smiled. "Well, now you do." And then she turned and walked off like she was auditioning for a reboot of Law and Order: Suburbia. I tried to laugh it off. Maybe she was just enthusiastic. Maybe she didn't like change. Or maybe, just maybe, it was the fact that I'm a tall, black man who moved into what had been a very uniform neighborhood for a very long time. I didn't tell anyone in the neighborhood that I had taken the job as Cypress Hollow's new chief of police. I wanted to settle in first, learn the town not just from a desk, but from porches and grocery store aisles and conversations over coffee. So when Brenda started peeking over my fence, I didn't flash a badge. I just kept pruning my roses. But she kept escalating. She left typed notes on my windshield reminding me about lawn height regulations. She asked my daughter, when she visited, if she was other family or just visiting. She even asked Mike, an old colleague who helped me move in, if he was a professional mover or someone I should know about. It was all thinly veiled, but it was veiled just enough to give her plausible deniability. Then came the Saturday. I was in the garage transplanting some bare root roses, delicate, expensive, and frankly more deserving of attention than Brenda McMillan's theatrics. My hands were covered in soil, the garage door open for light, but I was focused, peaceful, until the doorbell rang, and rang again, and then came the knocking. I heard her voice. "Mr. Evans? I saw you in the garage. Why aren't you answering the door?" I ignored it, not to be rude, just to finish what I was doing. But apparently, ignoring Brenda McMillan is considered a felony in this town. Because 5 minutes later, I heard sirens. 2 squad cars pulled up in front of my house. Lights on, neighbors peeking through blinds, and Brenda standing on my lawn, phone still in hand, gesturing like she was directing traffic at a crime scene. I stepped out onto the porch, wiping dirt on my jeans, heart thudding for a different reason than most might think. Not fear, just disbelief. One of the officers, a young man, stepped forward. "Sir, we got a call about a suspicious individual refusing to respond at this address." Brenda pointed. "That's him. He was hiding in the garage. Wouldn't answer the door." I feared for the neighborhood. I looked at her, then at the officers. Then I reached into my back pocket, pulled out my wallet, flipped it open. "Michael Evans, Chief of Police, Cypress Hollow. Officially starts Monday." Silence. You ever see a woman deflate? Not faint, not scream, just deflate, like a pool toy with a slow leak? Brenda turned sheet white. One of the officers cleared his throat. "Chief, we weren't aware you'd moved in yet." "Clearly," I said. Brenda here made sure of that. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The badge did the talking. Brenda tried to sputter out something about neighborhood vigilance and safety, but it came out like a car engine with no oil. "Calling 911 because someone doesn't open the door?" I said. "That's not community safety. That's harassment." The officers nodded awkwardly and left. Brenda didn't say a word, just shuffled back across the street like someone walking home from a spelling bee they lost in the first round. You'd think that would be the end of it. But no. Brenda started a new campaign, one of whispers. An anonymous letter showed up at the police station suggesting that the new chief was intimidating citizens, abusing authority, and fostering a climate of fear. It didn't mention my name, but it didn't have to. We filed it, documented it, ignored it. Then I launched a community initiative. Public education on what qualifies as a real emergency. Clear guidelines for Neighborhood Watch. Monthly meetings with open Q&A. And I gave a little talk at the community center. Nothing long, just 15 minutes. I said this: respect is the foundation of a safe neighborhood. And sometimes, respecting your neighbor means not assuming the worst just because they don't look like you or don't respond when you want them to. Brenda was there. Third row. Lavender tracksuit. She didn't speak. She didn't clap. She just listened. That was 6 months ago. Since then, my roses have bloomed like I've never seen. Brenda? She still lives across the street. But the curtain spying has stopped. No more notes. No more clipboard. Her gnome army mysteriously vanished one night after an anonymous bylaw complained about obstruction of public viewways. Funny how that works. Do I feel sorry for her? A little, but not much. Because this wasn't about a misunderstanding. It was about power. And what happens when the person used to holding it realizes she can't weaponize it anymore? Now every time I see a new neighbor move in, I make a point to walk over, shake their hand, and welcome them myself. Because I know what it feels like to be watched instead of welcomed, suspected instead of seen. And if you've ever dealt with your own version of a Brenda McMillan, let me tell you, the best revenge isn't yelling. It isn't retaliation. It's letting the truth bloom. Quietly. Beautifully. Right there in your own front yard. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had a neighbor go too far? Ever been judged before anyone even knew your name? Drop your story in the comments. Because sometimes, the best way to pull out weeds is to shine a little light on them. And sometimes, justice smells a whole lot like roses.